Hi there, everybody. This is Carrie Hamblen, the CEO and president of the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce, coming to you again with another one of our member benefits, our Zoom chats. And we have this as you, as a member of the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce, get to have these. And today I have with me one of my oldest friends, somebody I've known for many, many years. We've worked together in the biz, the radio biz. It's Edmundo Resendez, who is the director of development at KRWG. Hello, Mundo. How are you?
Hello, Carrie. I am happy to be here. I'm excited to be here as this is one of the Green Chamber benefits. That this is the second time I've had an opportunity to do it. So I'm very excited to be back. And as always, 'tis the season for tamales.
Oh, and I was thinking about this before we started recording because you're the one that taught me how to make tamales. Even before your youngest daughter was around, I
Hmm.
think, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was before Carmen, and we were there in that kitchen where you're sitting right now
Hmm.
making tamales. And I remember I made like a green chili steak filling, and you said, just bring your filling. I'm going to show you how to make tamales like my family does. And that was so fun.
It was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of work. But there's a lot of work. It's called a tamalada. And that's when people come together to make the tamales. And it's about tradition. It's about storytelling. It's about gossiping, and it's all those things all come together all around a table. And I do remember that particular day because I did make that invitation to a lot of friends. I said, you bring the stuffing, I'll provide everything. And that day we made over 25 pounds of masa.
Yeah.
It was a lot of tamales. I remember I had lots of pots going, and it
Mhm.
was fun. I remember at the end of the night I was so happy but exhausted.
Right, and I think that's something that we think about when we're thinking about traditions. And in southern New Mexico, we have the luminarias, we have the tamales, we have the bizcochos. Those are all things that are, as a non-Latina, really embracing those, and grateful to be able to participate in those things that are so much a part of a culture that is so much a fabric of our state. And so tell me about you, like, because you grew up, I mean, your family, you made tamales. I mean, that's something that you did, and I'm sure the chisme was always really good.
It
Um,
was always real good. And that's one of the things I enjoyed about it is that my brothers would go out and play in the yard. The men would be men doing what they do,
mhm.
and I like the chisme. I like hanging around the women. And so, my first job was refrying the beans
Oh,
and just stirring and stirring and stirring. And, it wasn't hard, but it took patience. And that's one of the things my mom taught me when it comes to cooking is you've got to be patient.
yeah.
And so that was my first job was of the refrying of the beans. Then I got promoted to the spreading of the masa. And that's one of the most challenging things. As you remember, it took
Yeah.
a lot of people that were trying to do it were like, is this too thick? Is this too thin? Is this enough? Or is this not enough?
Right. Right. There's something about, there's just like you get the feel of it, and then but the thing is that, I think of like the abuelas and the tias and moms who just like they knew. I mean, they didn't have to look at it. They knew. They knew
Well, and
exactly when they got it right.
I remember asking my mom several times, it's like, Mom, how do you know when the masa is ready? And she would just look at me and say, when it's ready.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, what about this? What about that? She goes, Mijo, I can't explain it to you. It's very challenging, but you've got to practice and you got to do it enough times until you get ready. And I have to say, this was a tradition that I wasn't doing nearly enough in my younger days, because I would just go to my mom's house and she would make them.
Right. Right.
But about 21 years ago, Jeannie, who's non-Latina, said, Edmundo, our girl has to grow up with the tradition of tamales for Christmas Eve. And we
And
were living in
Jeannie,
New Hampshire.
Jeannie is your wife and somebody
That's
that
right.
I've known even before she met you.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm.
So she encouraged me to teach the tradition to my older daughter. And, we lived in New Hampshire and it was challenging to get masa, but we were able to find some in a bag, the kind you mix, and it worked just fine. But that's when I started the tradition. Then we moved to Deming and she really encouraged me to, from there, do it. And we've been doing it every year for 20 years. I did skip one year. And that was because we were going to Disneyland and we weren't going to have time to clean up and do all that stuff. So we skipped that one year and we bought tamales from some local vendors, El Indio and from Roberto's, two local vendors.
But there, and I'm grateful that we have so many wonderful restaurants that offer tamales. But I'm wondering, how did you transfer just this something that is like so much a part of your family upbringing and so many people who live in southern New Mexico, to bring it to a television show?
Well, to bring it to a
To
television
a radio show.
Well,
yeah.
I actually did do a television show about making tamales. It's available on YouTube. It's Fronteras, a Changing America, and it's a show on how to make tamales. And it's with Juan Morales, and we converted as you might imagine, you being in the TV studios before, they're not really set up to do cooking, but we found a way to make it look like a cooking show. And so we did do a cooking show. I now get teased as being the tamale guy because recently the folks over at Neighbors Magazine did an article about making tamales for the holiday season, for the Christmas season, and they interviewed me about it. But how did it become that? Out of curiosity and out of storytelling, I was curious to experiment on a show about making tamales for an entire hour. And I thought, will this be successful? Carrie, the first year, our social media lit up. The phone calls that came in lit up. And the thing about the phone calls is a lot of people were like, this is something we've been wanting because we've been curious as to how to make tamales and we don't know how. We buy them, but we don't know how to make them. So a lot of people were just curious about the process. And it's grown ever since. And I remember by the 5th year, I asked Juan, Juan, do you really think we can continue doing this? I mean, is this something that's, run its course? And we both thought about it. And we did the show the very next day and the lines lit up. People were still calling. We've got a social media campaign running right now and people are sharing it and people are talking about it already. So yes, it's one of those creative thoughts that came into my mind. Will this be possible to make? And will KRWG Public Media FM be willing to do it? That was the key. And they were, and they've allowed us to do it ever since.
Well, and this is along the same lines. I mean, it's really kind of a lovely formula that works when you think of Gardening Confidential with Jeff Anderson and Chili Confidential with Juan and we did the Beer Confidential. And so, it is really a great way to engage listeners in the community and also share a bit of knowledge, which is really kind of the standard modus operandi of public broadcasting, is to teach people things.
Well, it is. And, one of the things that I've been looking for is a guest that's an abuelita that can come in and talk to us about the process and the history. And that's what we're going to be trying to do. We try to do now this week. We were trying to do it this week. I've got a child that's 6, so I won't be able to go out in the community and get some of those stories. But we've done it in the past where we've interviewed people to see who's got the best tamales, who makes the best tamales. And the Sun News did an article about 3 years ago, and they did a countdown. And I don't remember how many people were in there. Roberto's was in it, El Indio was in it, and Bosa Donuts wound up taking the top prize for the best tamales.
Right. They've got a great following, and people are loyal.
Yes, they are.
It is interesting because it is so fun, and it's a great way to engage. And I'm wondering, when you the thing is, the idea of getting an abuelita. I mean, there's a woman on YouTube and on social media who has become social media famous because she's making all these traditional Mexican dishes, no English whatsoever. I mean, she's just going through and she's doing her thing, and people love her. And it's amazing to follow her and learn from her as well. And so with tomorrow's show, what can you give a little preview of it?
Well, tomorrow's show is going to be interesting because tomorrow last year the show focused more on storytelling and tradition. Tomorrow we're going to focus on recipes. We're going to focus on the process of making them, the process of what recipes we can use. I know some folks like vegetarian. My family, they prefer the vegetarian dishes. They're not vegetarian. My oldest daughter is, but Jeannie, my wife, is not vegetarian, but she prefers the refried bean tamales, and she prefers the cheese tamales. And we use asadero for the tamales. And
you shouldn't use any other kind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Juan Morales and I have this debate because he prefers cheddar. I'm like, no, cheddar's for something else, dude. Asadero is the tradition, and that's what we're going with.
Well, and I usually use like Munster in my rellenos.
Hmm.
But asadero, yeah, it's kind of like you're like, if you know the recipe works, you want to stick with it, because otherwise you've got your hopes up for this, like, oh, I'm going to try this new tamale, and then it's not going to be what you want.
Well, and that's what I tell folks that are interested in making tamales. Stick to what you know. If
Yeah.
you want to experiment, you know, don't don't put yourself in a situation where if you're gonna experiment with a small batch, okay, a very small batch, maybe a dozen or less, but stick to what you know, because that's what's gonna work. And that's what the family is expecting. The
Yeah.
worst thing you can do is have family expecting one thing. You've experimented with something that didn't turn out quite as well as you would have liked, and you're gonna set up the folks for disappointment. You're gonna set up yourself for disappointment. So stick to what you know, do it well, repeat, and continue doing it, because that's what folks are going to remember the most.
So let me ask you this. Is it sacrilegious to put queso on a tamale?
Queso? No, nothing is
Okay.
sacrilegious. Now, I'll tell you something. I lived in the Midwest, and I remember traveling up there, and I took some tamales from home, and there they were like, oh, tamales. And they broke out a can of chili with an I, and they poured them all over the tamales. And I was like, oh
Oh,
my goodness.
oh, why would they do that?
But that's what they saw somewhere, that's the way you eat them. And you know what? More power to them, because there's some recipes, Carrie, that call for tamale pies.
Oh,
Okay, and that's one of the recipes we're going to share tomorrow. It's a tamale pie that you put in the oven, and you put cheese and you put all kinds of things in it. Not queso, but cheese, and so you can experiment with that. It's a Texas tamale chili pie.
okay. I
So
mean, it sounds very much like people in Minnesota and Wisconsin, where my family is from. It's like it's all about casseroles.
it's a casserole. That's
So
exactly what
I
it
can
is. That's
see this
exactly what it
exact.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Throw,
it's exactly what it is.
throw in some tater tots, and then you're going to be totally legit, right?
Exactly,
Oh
exactly.
my God, I'm just not pleased with that thought, though. And so, with listeners, so okay, so recipes tomorrow. How can listeners participate in the show tomorrow? That's going from 1 to 2 on KRWG Radio, so 90.7 FM.
Correct. It's on 90.7 FM. And what you folks can participate by calling us at 575-646-2212. Okay, that's the number to call in. They can also participate on social media, because we're going to be broadcasting the show live on Facebook, and they can submit their questions. Now, here's what we're doing, Carrie. For those that submit questions, share stories, share some tips, share some recipes, they'll be entered into 3 drawings to win $20 gift cards to the Santa Fe Grill. So you can, take a break from the tamales. What I like to do, for us, we order pizza on the night of making tamales, because
Right.
we gather a whole bunch of folks, and we just want to be eating and not worry about dirtying dishes or anything like that. But this year, we're making them on Christmas Eve. So we're going to
Oh,
have tamales on Christmas Eve night. But going back to tuning in, 90.7 FM, krwg.org. You can tune into krwg.org. You can participate on Facebook Live and tune in through that. Right now, you can go to our event page, go to KRWG, our Facebook page, and click on the event page, and you can submit their questions right there, right now. There's lots of ways to do it. You can also submit a question to feedback@nmsu.edu, at feedback@nmsu.edu, and you can submit your questions, share your tips. There's so many ways to
and
communicate. The key is just listen.
I'm excited about that.
Mhm.
Because there are certainly recipes, and that might be I need a refresher on the spreading of the masa in the corn, the husks, because there's just, you cannot go wrong with a good tamale. I mean, it's something that just it does so much for you. I think it brings back memories if it's something that you've grown up with. It reminds you of why you live where you live.
Exactly.
And in some cases, it's really just a lovely reflection of some beautiful traditions that our state, is proud and honored to be able to share. So very excited about Talking Tamales tomorrow. from 1 to 2 o'clock on KRWG Radio. We'll have all the information on how you can go ahead and participate by either emailing feedback@nmsu.edu or going to the KRWG Facebook page, which will have a link either above or below, all depending on where you're looking at that. And very excited, Mundo. I can't wait to hear the show. Are you going to be doing it from your house, though? And then
No, I'm going to find a way to go in the studio, have a nice microphone, and I'm going to decorate the studio with tamale husks, and going to be doing some examples on it. The key, by the way, the biggest tip I've got to give people is to make sure that tamale husks are soft.
Oh, right,
Yes.
because you soaked them. You soaked them for a long time.
And I found the creative way to do it is get yourself a cooler, put the husks in there, weigh them down, and then pour some hot boiling water. And then you close the cooler, and within 20 minutes, presto, they're good to go.
Brilliant.
They're good to go. And that is my biggest tip, is make sure, because what happens if they're not moist, they will burn.
It doesn't stick, right? And it doesn't stick,
it doesn't
right?
stick. And the heat will cause them to burn and make your tamales burn. And all you need is one tamale to burn, and it ruins the entire.
Oh, it does.
batch.
It does. It tastes horrible. Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, Mundo, best of luck to you. Thank you so much. Very excited about listening to the show tomorrow, and maybe I'll be prompted to call in. Not like I have a whole lot to contribute, but I can't wait to learn a whole lot.
Well, you can share the stories, Carrie, and growing up, in El Paso, growing up in this region and stuff, it's all about sharing stories. It's that's really what I want it to be about, is sharing stories. And it just so happens that we're going to be sharing recipes as well.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Now, if you'd like to go ahead and do a Zoom chat to help uplift your business or highlight something that you're doing, contact me here on the Facebook page. I'll be more than happy to schedule that for you. Mundo will have all the information about Talking Tamales tomorrow at 1 o'clock on KRWG. Good luck. My best to Carmen to try and get her to recover from the flu, pobrecita, and we'll see you soon.
All right. See you on the radio tomorrow.
All right. See you on the radio.